Connor Hale didn't even slow down. He walked straight across Riverside Park like he owned every blade of grass under his sneakers, his boys trailing behind him, one of them already holding up a phone. He stopped in front of the bench under the oak tree. An old black woman was sitting there wrapping a child's hands with quiet focus, unhurried, like the whole world could wait. Connor reached out and shoved the coaching mitts off the bench. They hit the ground and slid across the concrete. "Move it," he said. "I don't know what kind of little boot camp you're running out here, but nobody wants to watch some old black lady play coach. Clear the bench. We're filming here." The woman looked up slowly. She didn't flinch. She didn't blink. Connor looked at his boys, grinned, then crouched down to her eye level like he was talking to a child. "What's wrong? You deaf too? I said move. Go find a porch somewhere to rock on Grandma. This park ain't a plantation. You don't get to just sit wherever you want anymore." One of his friends laughed so hard he nearly dropped the phone. Connor wasn't done. He straightened up, looked directly into the camera, and said it like a punchline. Like the whole thing was already content. "Somebody call the city. We got a stray." The woman on the bench said nothing. She simply looked at him steady, measuring unhurried the way a person looks at something they have already completely figured out. Connor Hale had no idea, not even a flicker, that the woman sitting on that bench had stood in the corner of 3 world championship fights, that the hands now folding calmly in her lap had guided 3 men to WBA titles, that every champion she ever trained called her the same thing: the last person you ever want to disrespect. This is the story of Dorothea Washington, and the day Connor Hale made the worst mistake of his life in front of 21,000 people. Stay with this one. Drop a comment right now, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. And if nobody's told you yet to subscribe, consider this your sign. You don't want to miss what comes next. Dorothea Washington had lived on Clover Street for 38 years. Same house. Same front porch with the 2 wooden chairs her husband James had built the summer they moved in. Same rose bushes along the fence that James had planted from cuttings tended every spring until his hands couldn't manage it anymore, and then tended by Dot every spring after that. Because some things you keep doing, not out of habit, but out of love. James had been gone 6 years. The roses still came back every April without being asked. Dot was 72 years old. She moved carefully in the mornings, her left shoulder wrapped before she got dressed, the old injury reminding her every single day that it was still there. She wore reading glasses now for anything smaller than a headline. Her hair had gone fully silver sometime in her early 60s, and she had decided she liked it that way. Most people on Clover Street knew Dot as the woman who brought soup when you were sick and told you the truth when you needed it, and didn't sugarcoat either one. They knew she had something to do with boxing. James had been a fighter, everyone knew that much, but the details were vague. She never offered them. When people asked what she did before she retired, she told them she used to coach a little. They nodded and moved on. That was fine with Dot. What they didn't know was the leather notebook on her kitchen shelf, its spine cracked from 40 years of opening and closing. Inside, in Dot's precise handwriting, were the training records of 3 men who had stood under the brightest lights in professional boxing and won. Marcus Bell, W.B., a welterweight champion, 1994. Dion Carter, B.A. junior middleweight champion, 2003. Isaiah Webb, U.B.A., a middleweight champion, 2011. 3 different decades, 3 different fighters, 1 trainer in the corner for all of them. They didn't know about the calls she still got from fighters across the country asking for 30 minutes of her time on the phone. They didn't know that Isaiah Webb, who had earned $41 million across his professional career, called Dot every Sunday morning, without exception. They didn't know that the worn coaching mitts sitting in her canvas tote dark brown leather, stitched by hand, purchased in 1971, the same year Ali fought Frazier at Madison Square Garden, had never once been repaired or resoled in 48 years of daily use. The leather had simply hardened into something that refused to quit. Her shoulder had ended the ringside work in 2019. Not her choice. The rotator cuff had torn during a training session, and the surgeon had been clear. No more standing in corners for 3-minute rounds, no more holding mitts at full extension, no more of the physical demands that professional coaching required. She had sat in her car in the hospital parking lot for 45 minutes after that appointment, and then driven home and made dinner and not spoken about it again. But she still walked to Riverside Park every morning at 7. She had started going 3 years ago after James died, and the mornings became too quiet and too long. She brought the canvas tote out of habit more than intention. The first few weeks, she just sat on the bench under the old oak tree and drank coffee from a thermos and watched the neighborhood wake up. Then the kids started appearing. Jalen was the third one to find her, but he was the one who stayed, 11 years old. Small for his age, all angles and watchfulness. He had a slight limp in his right leg from a fall 2 years earlier that had never been properly treated. His Aunt Gloria had taken him to urgent care twice, but the follow-up specialist visits required time off work that Gloria simply didn't have. The limp was worse when he was anxious. Dot noticed it before she noticed anything else about him. His father had been gone since Jalen was 6. No explanation given to the boy, no goodbye. Just absence filling up the space where a person used to be. He lived with his Aunt Gloria, who worked a double shift at the hospital laundry 5 days a week, and loved him completely, and was exhausted down to her bones. The first morning, Jalen watched from behind the water fountain. Second morning, he moved to the end of the path. Third morning, Dot didn't look up from what she was doing. She just reached into the tote and set a pair of small gloves on the bench beside her. She didn't say anything. She just left them there. Jalen stood very still for a long moment. Then he walked over and picked them up. "You ever hit anything before?" Dot asked. He shook his head. "Good," she said. "Means I don't have to unteach you anything." She showed him the stance first. Feet shoulder-width apart, left foot forward, weight balanced and low. Not rigid, not stiff. "Move like water," she told him. "Don't crash into trouble. Flow around it." She showed him how to hold his hands, not clenched tight and high like someone bracing for impact, but relaxed and ready, covering the face without blocking the vision. Jalen was a careful student. He listened the way children listen when they are starving for someone to take them seriously. He didn't ask many questions. He just watched Dot's hands and feet and did his best to copy what he saw. And when he got it wrong, he didn't get frustrated. He just reset and tried again. His limp disappeared when he moved in the stance. Dot noticed that too. Within 2 weeks, 5 other kids had joined them. Within a month, it was 9. Parents nodded at Dot from across the park. Gloria began dropping Jalen off 30 minutes early because he was already awake and dressed and sitting by the door before she came downstairs. One morning, Dot arrived to find Jalen had swept the concrete around the oak tree clean with a branch. She didn't comment on it. She just set the tote down and started wrapping his hands. That was how things were at Riverside Park. Quiet, steady, purposeful, until the silver SUV started idling at the park entrance every morning. Never parking, never leaving, just watching. Connor Hale showed up on a Tuesday. He came through the park gate at 8:15 with 3 friends, the way young men come when they are looking for something to film rather than something to do. One of them had a phone out before they were through the gate. Another wore a wireless speaker clipped to his belt, music bleeding into the morning air like noise looking for a fight. Connor was 24. He had his father's jawline and his father's confidence, and none of the political instincts that had made his father useful. He had dropped out of 2 colleges in 3 years, not because he lacked intelligence, but because nothing had ever required him to finish anything. His TikTok account had 280,000 followers. The content was always the same: find someone who won't push back. Push anyway, film the reaction. He called it social commentary. His followers called it comedy. It was neither. He spotted Dot and Jalen from across the basketball courts. An old black woman in a canvas jacket running some kind of training session with a group of kids on cracked concrete. Worn equipment. A hand-painted sign zip-tied to the oak tree that read, "Riverside Youth Training, all welcome," in green letters. "Yo, get this," Connor said. He nodded at the friend with the phone. "This is gold." They crossed the court. Connor walked directly to the bench where Dot had set the canvas tote and knocked it sideways with his foot. The mitts and hand wraps spilled across the ground. A jump rope uncoiled and slid off the edge of the concrete. Dot looked up from what she was doing. She didn't stand. She didn't raise her voice. She looked at Connor the way she had looked at 100 fighters who came into the gym thinking they already knew everything, patient, steady, measuring. "That's our equipment," she said simply. "Equipment!" Connor turned to the camera with a grin. "Equipment." She said, "Equipment. Lady, this looks like stuff from a church rummage sale." He looked back at Dot. "You got a permit for this, because last I checked, you can't just set up a homeless training camp in a public park." "We're not homeless," Dot said. "We're training. Training." He repeated the word like it tasted funny. Training for what? The Senior Citizen Olympics. His friends laughed. The phone stayed up, recording everything. Dot put one hand on Jalen's shoulder. "Pick up your gloves, baby." "Hey, I'm talking to you." Connor stepped between them, closer now, performing for the camera. "You don't have authorization to run programs in this park. You can't just plant yourself here every morning like you own the place. This is a public space." "Yes," Dot agreed quietly. "It is. Public. Which means we're allowed to be here." Connor stared at her. He was not used to calm. Calm didn't perform well. He needed a reaction, raised voice, tears, someone walking away in visible distress. That was the content. Dot was giving him nothing, and he didn't know what to do with nothing. He looked at the camera, shrugged, kicked the jump rope off the concrete into the grass. "Pack it up, Grandma. Find a retirement home to do this." He and his crew walked toward the basketball courts. The music from the speaker swallowed up the quiet. Dot watched them go. Then she turned back to the children, all of them frozen, watching her face for information about how to feel. "All right," she said. "Let's work on the slip. Jalen, show them what we did yesterday." Jalen looked at her for a moment. Then he planted his feet, raised his hands, and moved. That night, Connor posted the footage with a caption, "Old Black Lady runs underground fight club for kids in the park, LOL." No permit, no certification, just vibes. He tagged Riverside Park's location. He tagged the city parks department. He tagged his father's official account. By midnight, it had 22,000 likes. The comments were mostly laughter. A few people asked who she was. Connor responded to those with a shrugging emoji. He didn't think about her again that night. He should have. The next morning, Connor came back. This time, he brought a large cup of iced coffee from the drive-thru, 2 blocks from the park. He mentioned the price in the caption. Later, $4.50, like that detail made it funnier. He waited until Dot was mid-sentence, showing Jalen how to slip a straight right by moving the head 2 inches outside the line of the punch. No more, no less. Her voice was quiet and precise, and the boy was locked in, focused, his whole body listening. Connor walked up behind her and poured the entire cup over her head and shoulders. Ice and cold coffee ran down the back of Dot's neck, soaked through her collar, dripped from the hem of her canvas jacket. The cup hit the concrete. His friend screamed with laughter. The phone caught every second of it. Dot went absolutely still. She didn't gasp. She didn't spin around. She didn't make a sound. She stood there while the cold ran down her spine, and after a long moment, she reached up and removed her reading glasses and dried them on the inside of her shirt. Put them back on. Adjusted her collar. Turned back to Jalen, who stood frozen, his mouth pressed into a hard line, his hands shaking at his sides, not from cold. "Where were we?" Dot said. Not a question, a statement. Miss Dot." Jalen's voice broke on the stutter he'd almost conquered. "I know," she said. "Show me the slip." Jalen didn't move for a full second. Then he planted his feet and moved his head 2 inches outside the line. Perfect. Exactly right. Behind them, Connor was already typing the caption. He posted the video before he left the park. By evening, it had 60,000 views. The comment that got the most likes read simply, "Do it again tomorrow." Dot didn't see the video that night. She sat at her kitchen table and opened the leather notebook and ran her finger down 3 names. Then she closed it, turned off the light, and went to bed. But she didn't sleep. The mitts had been a gift. James had brought them home on a Thursday evening in the fall of 1971, wrapped in brown paper and tied with kitchen twine, set on the kitchen table without ceremony. Dot had been 21 years old and already spending every spare hour at the Millhaven Boxing Club, doing everything the men around her would allow. A wrapping hands, keeping records, studying footwork from the back row while the real coaching happened at the front. She had unwrapped the paper and looked at the mitts for a long time without speaking. "You see things the other coaches don't see," James had told her. "One day they're going to figure that out. You should have proper equipment when they do." The leather was dark brown, hand-stitched, made by a craftsman in Philadelphia, whose name was stamped on the interior in faded ink. They were built for the professional trainer, not a spectator. James had saved for 6 weeks to buy them. Dot had used them at every training session for 48 years. The leather had hardened and darkened and molded to the shape of her hands the way good leather does when it is used properly and cared for daily. She cleaned them every evening with a damp cloth. She had never had them repaired. They had never needed it. They were the most valuable thing she owned. Not in money, in everything else. Connor Hale picked them up off the bench on a Thursday morning, while Dot was showing Jalen how to pivot on the back foot. He didn't ask. He just reached down and took them one in each hand and held them up to the camera. "Look at these antiques. What museum did you steal these from?" He tossed one to the friend on his left. The friend tossed it to the friend on his right. They played catch with them across the width of the concrete back and forth, laughing, while Dot stood very still and watched. "Give those back," she said. Her voice was quiet, but something in her jaw was tight. "Or what?" Connor dangled one mitt over the trash can at the edge of the court. "You want it, come get it." Dot took one step forward. Connor dropped it in the trash. Then he dropped the other one. He brushed his palms together like he was dusting off something dirty. "There. Now they're with the rest of the garbage." He walked away without looking back. His crew followed, still laughing, the music from the speaker fading as they crossed toward the far end of the park. Dot stood at the edge of the concrete for a moment. The children were silent. Jalen's hands were clenched at his sides, and his jaw was working like he was trying to hold something inside his mouth. "Let's call it a day," Dot said. That night at 9:45, Dot walked to the park alone. The paths were empty. One streetlight over the east entrance was out, and the oak tree was just a dark shape against a darker sky. She found the trash can, reached in, and retrieved both mitts. She carried them home under her arm. She sat on the porch for an hour cleaning them with a damp cloth the way she did every evening. The leather came back. It always came back. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was not. She was still on the porch when the city parks truck came by the following Tuesday morning. 2 workers in orange vests. They moved quickly, like people who had been told to finish before the regular park visitors arrived. Dot watched from across the path as they spray-painted over the wooden signboard she had hung on the oak tree Riverside Youth Training, all welcome, with a flat gray primer, 2 coats until the green letters were completely gone. One of the workers glanced at her, looked away, kept painting. That was Tuesday. On Wednesday, the bench was different. Dot saw it before Jalen did. She arrived at 7 as always, canvas tote over her shoulder, thermos in hand, and she saw it from 20 feet away. Someone had painted across the seat in thick red letters, "Go home, Grandma." Below it, smaller, "This park isn't for you." She stopped walking, read it once, read it again. Jalen arrived 4 minutes later, came around the path from the east entrance, and stopped beside her. He read the bench, read it again. His limp, the one that got worse when he was anxious, came back fully both feet every step. "Miss Dot," he said. His stutter swallowed the rest. "I know," she said. She sat down on the bench anyway, right on top of the paint, without hesitation, like it wasn't there. "Come on," she said. "Work on your cross today. Let's get the elbow angle right." But the other parents had already begun doing the math. By Thursday, 2 more families had pulled their children from the morning sessions. By Friday, 3 more. Deshawn's mother came in person, apologetic, her eyes not quite meeting Dot's. "I can't have him in the middle of whatever this is becoming," she said. "I'm sorry. It's not about you." Dot nodded. "I understand." She did understand. She understood completely. She just kept coming back anyway. Only Jalen remained. Gloria dropped him off every morning before her shift, no conversation about pulling him, no hesitation. She couldn't afford a different option, and she wouldn't have chosen one anyway. Her nephew walked straighter when he came home from the park. That was enough for her. What none of them knew, not Gloria, not Jalen, not the parents who had left, was what was happening in Dot's garage every night after 10. The heavy bag had hung from the ceiling beam since 1986. James had installed it the year after his career ended, when he still thought rehabilitation was possible. He had used it for 2 years. Then the shoulder had made that impossible, and the bag had hung there unmoving for decades. Dot had not touched it in 30 years. But now, 3 nights in a row, she went into the garage and closed the door and wrapped her hands in the dark, 2 loops at the wrist, 3 across the knuckle, pulled tight between each finger, and found the bag and began to work. Left jab, right cross, left hook to the body. The bag swung. The ceiling beam held. Her shoulder ached from the first combination, and she ignored it. She worked for 2 hours the first night, 3 the second. She didn't tell anyone. Not Jalen. Not Gloria. Not the ghost of James, whose photo she passed every morning on the kitchen shelf. She pressed her forehead against the bag after midnight, breathing hard, hands throbbing, and she whispered into the dark, "Not yet, James. I know. Not yet." But something in her voice had already changed. And 2 blocks away, a silver SUV sat parked on the street outside Riverside Park, with its engine running and its lights off, and whoever was inside it was watching the park entrance and making a phone call. Alderman Stephen Hale had held his seat on the Millhaven City Council for 11 years. He was the kind of politician who understood that power wasn't about what you did in public. It was about what you prevented from happening at all. 3 terms: Chair of the Parks and Recreation Committee, Chair of the Public Safety Subcommittee, His name was on the plaques outside two renovated community centers and a youth sports complex on the north side of the city that had cost taxpayers $4.2 million and had been built by a contractor who golfed with Hale every other Saturday. Nobody filed complaints that went anywhere. Not in Millhaven. Not about Stephen Hale. 2 formal complaints had already been submitted about Connor's behavior at Riverside Park. The first came from a father who had filmed the ice water incident on his own phone from across the path. He submitted it to the Parks Department online portal on a Wednesday evening. By Thursday morning, it had been marked as reviewed and filed under a category labeled insufficient evidence for action. The second complaint came from a woman who lived in the apartment building overlooking the park's east entrance. She had watched Connor spray paint the bench from her third-floor window. Her complaint was assigned a case number and never opened again. Miriam Cross had watched all of it from her window across the street. She had picked up the phone 4 times in 2 weeks. 4 times she had set it back down. Her daughter had told her plainly, "Mama, his daddy runs the precinct. You call, they write your name down, and nothing else happens." Miriam had stared at the phone for a long time after that. Then she had gone back to the window and kept watching. Connor's TikTok was growing. The ice water video had been shared by 3 larger accounts and had crossed 200,000 views by the end of the week. His comment section had become a community organized around a specific pleasure, watching someone who wouldn't react get pushed further and further. One commenter with 40,000 followers of his own wrote, "She hasn't broken yet. That's the real content. Keep going." It got 900 likes. Connor read that comment at 11 at night and smiled. The following Monday, Alderman Hale's office made a phone call to the Millhaven Courier, the local news outlet that covered city government and neighborhood affairs. The call came from Hale's communications director, a man named Patrick Reeves, who had worked for Hale for 7 years and understood exactly how to frame a story without appearing to plant one. He told the Courier's assignment editor that there had been community concerns about unauthorized activity in Riverside Park, an uncertified individual running unsupervised youth programming, possible liability issues for the city. The Courier sent a reporter the next morning. She arrived at 7:45 while Dot was mid-session with Jalen and 2 other children who had come back despite their parents' hesitation. The reporter was young, not unkind, but she had been given a frame before she arrived, and she was working inside it. She walked directly to Dot and held out a microphone. "Ma'am, I'm with the Millhaven Courier. Can you tell me whether you have a permit to conduct youth programming activities in this park? Are you a certified coach? Do you have background clearance to work with minors?" The questions came fast, one after another, before Dot could answer the first one. Dot looked at the microphone, then at the reporter. Then she said very calmly, "I'm not running a program. I'm sitting in a public park with children whose parents know exactly where they are. But you're conducting what appears to be structured coaching activity. I'm teaching children how to stand up straight," Dot said. "If that requires a permit in Millhaven, I'll need to see that in writing." The reporter glanced at her notepad, glanced back up. The camera operator behind her was still rolling. Jalen stood 3 feet away watching the whole exchange. His limp was back, both feet, every step he took. The story ran that afternoon on the Courier's website under the headline "City Reviews Unauthorized Youth Activity at Riverside Park." It quoted an unnamed city official expressing concern about liability. It quoted Patrick Reeves by name expressing the alderman's commitment to keeping park spaces safe and properly supervised. It did not quote Dot. The 2 sentences attributed to her had been cut from the final version. Then 4 days before Connor's announced live stream, a letter arrived at Dot's door. City of Millhaven, Parks and Recreation Department, official letterhead. She opened it at the kitchen table, standing up still in her jacket from the morning session. She read it once. Then she sat down and read it again. It was a cease and desist order. Effective immediately, she was directed to discontinue all unauthorized coaching and youth programming activities within the boundaries of Riverside Park. Violation of this order would result in a fine of $500 per day of continued activity. The letter was dated 4 days earlier. Dot set it down on the table next to James's photo. She read the date again. 4 days earlier. 2 days before Connor had even announced the live stream. This had been in motion before the confrontation anyone could see. Someone had filed the paperwork, moved it through the city system, and gotten a signature on it while Connor was still picking his camera angle. They planned this, she said, to the kitchen, to the photo, to no one. She sat there for a long time without moving. Then she got up and went to the shelf and took down the leather notebook. She opened it to the first page. Marcus Bell, 1994. She turned to the next entry. Dion Carter, 2003. She turned to the last entry. Isaiah Webb, 2011. She read through her own notes for 45 minutes. The combinations, the footwork corrections, the adjustments she had made round by round, the decisions she had made under pressure in the corner when everything was on the line and there was no one else to make them. Then she closed the notebook, picked up her phone, dialed a number she had not called in 6 years. It rang twice. "Ray," she said. "It's Dot Washington. I need to talk." A pause on the other end. Then a sharp intake of breath like a man who has just recognized something he thought was gone. "Dot," Ray Fontaine said. "I've been waiting for you to call." Connor announced the live stream on Wednesday night. He posted it across every platform. He used the same message formatted for each one. "Tomorrow morning, Riverside Park. We finish what we started. Come watch." He pinned it to the top of his TikTok profile. By midnight, 14,000 people had set a reminder. Dot saw the post. Gloria called her at 9 that evening, voice tight. "Mr. Reeves, you need to see this." Dot looked at the screen for a moment. Then she set the phone face down on the table and went to bed. She didn't sleep. At 5:30 in the morning, she got up, made coffee, and sat on the porch in the dark. The street was quiet. James's roses were still closed the way roses are before the sun finds them. She sat with the coffee and watched the sky change color over the rooftops, and didn't think about anything in particular. At 6:15, she went inside, wrapped her shoulder, got dressed, picked up the canvas tote, and walked to Riverside Park. Jalen was already there. He had arrived before her, which had never happened before. He was sitting on the bench under the oak tree, the bench with the red paint that the city hadn't bothered to clean, go home. Grandma still visible under the morning light. His hands were in his lap. His shoes were tied in double knots the way Dot had taught him, and he was sitting in the ready position, back straight, weight forward like he was prepared for something and had decided not to pretend otherwise. Dot set the tote down, sat beside him. Didn't say anything for a moment. "You didn't have to come today," she said. "I know," Jalen said. She looked at him. He looked back. That was the whole conversation. She started wrapping his hands at 6:25. 2 loops at the wrist, 3 across the knuckle, pulled tight between each finger. She worked slowly the way she always worked, and neither of them spoke, and the park was very quiet around them. Connor arrived at 8:10. He came through the north gate with 4 friends. The live stream was already running. One of the crew had started it from the parking lot, panning across the park building. Anticipation. A ring light clipped to the phone. A second phone for backup footage. Connor had prepared. He had even changed his shirt. The viewer count in the corner of the screen read 11,000 and was climbing. Connor crossed the basketball courts without hurrying. the way someone walks when they are certain of the ending. He stopped in front of the oak tree, looked at Dot, looked at Jalen, looked at the camera. "Still here," he said like he was announcing a joke. "I genuinely cannot believe she's still here." He reached down and pulled the coaching mitts out of the canvas tote, the ones he had thrown in the trash 2 weeks earlier, the ones Dot had retrieved at night and cleaned and returned to exactly the same place. He held them up to the camera. "Museum pieces, ladies and gentlemen. Living history." "Put those down," Dot said. "Or what?" He tossed one mitt to his friend. His friend held it up, grinning. Then Connor turned to Jalen. He crouched down to the boy's level, the camera closing in from behind. "You know what your problem is, kid? You got nobody. Your daddy's not around. Your mama's not around. And your coach is a 72-year-old woman with a busted shoulder who can't even defend herself." He leaned in slightly. "You're wasting your time here. Both of you are." Jalen's mouth pressed into a hard line. His hands curled into fists at his sides. The stutter was there, right behind his teeth, swallowing every word he was trying to find. "Leave the boy," Dot said. Her voice was very low. Connor straightened up, looked at the camera, smiled. Then he shoved Jalen, both hands, full force, into an 11-year-old boy's chest. Jalen flew backward. His right leg, the injured one, the one that had never been properly treated, the one that got worse under stress, buckled when he hit the edge of the concrete where the tree roots had cracked and lifted it. He went down hard. His head struck the raised edge of the broken concrete. A sound that was wrong, too solid, too sharp. He lay still for a moment. Then the blood appeared. A thin line at first at the temple just above his right ear. Then it ran, darkening as it moved past his cheekbone into the collar of his shirt. His hands were still in guard position, even on the ground. Still up. Still protecting what matters. The viewer count read 19,000. Dot looked at Jalen on the ground, at the blood, at his hands still raised, still fighting even when the rest of him had stopped. Something shifted behind her eyes. Not anger. Something older than anger. Something that had been sleeping in a garage for 30 years and had been waking up slowly, night by night, combination by combination, and was now entirely, completely awake. She reached up and removed her reading glasses, folded them with both hands, set them on the bench with the red paint, on top of the words, "Go home, Grandma," and straightened up. She turned to Connor. "Son," she said quietly, "you need to stop right there." Connor laughed. He looked into the camera. "Or what, Grandma? What exactly are you going to do?" He threw a punch. A wide, looping overhand right all-arm, no foundation, no guard, the punch of someone who has never been hit back and doesn't believe they will be. Dot slipped it. 2 inches to the left. No more, no less. His fist passed through air. His momentum carried him forward off balance, and his eyes went wide for one fraction of a second, the first real thing she had seen on his face since he arrived. What followed was not a brawl. It was a lesson. 3 combinations. Measured, precise, economical. The jab came first, straight down the center textbook, the sound sharp and definitive. Connor's head snapped back. Then the right cross to the body underneath his dropped guard, every molecule of air leaving his lungs in a single sound. His mouth opened and nothing came out. Then the uppercut back foot planted at exactly 45 degrees, hips rotating, before the arm moved the fist, traveling from the waist, the way her trainers had always done it, the way she had taught it 4,000 times in 40 years. Connor left the ground. Both feet. Just for a moment. Then he hit the concrete and didn't move. 3 combinations. 7 seconds. 30 years of silence broken in 7 seconds. The park went completely still. 19,000 viewers. Not one comment for 4 full seconds. Then the screen filled faster than anyone could read. Dot stood over Connor for 1 moment. Then she turned, walked to Jalen, and knelt on the cracked concrete beside him. She pressed her palm against the cut at his temple, gentle, firm, the way you hold something that matters. "You okay?" she asked. Jalen looked up at her. His eyes were wide but not afraid. Something else entirely. "Miss Dot," he whispered. "You can fight." Dot said nothing. She unwrapped his hands, rewrapped the cleanest section of tape across the cut to slow the bleeding, and sat beside him on the ground with her arm around his shoulders. Across the park, Connor's friends were crouched over him, pulling him upright. The ring light was still on. The stream was still running. By noon, the clip had 6 million views. By evening, #WhoIsThisWoman was the top trending hashtag in the country. And in an apartment across town, Ray Fontaine watched the clip for the 12th time. He paused it at the uppercut, zoomed in on the footwork, the 45-degree plant, the hip rotation before the arm. "That's a trainer's movement," he said to the empty room. "That's not street. I know exactly who that is." He picked up the phone. They came for Dot on Monday morning at 6 a.m. 2 officers. Unmarked car. They knocked on the door of the house on Clover Street, while the sky was still more gray than blue, and James's roses were closed tight against the cold. Dot opened the door in her canvas jacket, the tote bag sitting by the door ready for the morning session, the way it always was at this hour. The officer on the left read from a card. "Dorothea Washington, you are under arrest for aggravated assault in the commission of a battery against Connor Hale." Dot looked at him for a moment. Then she set the tote down on the porch step, carefully, handles up the way you set something down when you intend to come back for it. She took off her reading glasses and held out her wrists. Across the street, Miriam Cross was at her window. She watched them put handcuffs on a 72-year-old woman at sunrise. She stood at the window for a long time after the car pulled away. Then she went to the kitchen and called her daughter and cried for 20 minutes. Her daughter said, "Mama, I know." Alderman Stephen Hale held a press conference at 2 that afternoon. He stood behind the podium in the City Hall, briefing room suit, pressed American flag pin on his lapel, the blue and gold seal of Mill Haven on the wall behind him. Connor sat to his right jaw, wired neck brace, arm in a sling, dark circles under both eyes. The camera operators loved it. A father and his injured son, perfectly composed. "My son was violently and without provocation attacked by an individual in a public park," Hale said, his voice measured with practiced grief. "Connor is 24 years old. He suffered a broken nose, a hairline fracture of the jaw, and a concussion requiring overnight observation. This was not self-defense. This was a calculated assault by someone who used trained fighting techniques against an unarmed young man." He paused, looked down at his notes, looked back up. "I am calling on the district attorney to pursue the maximum available sentence. No one, regardless of age, regardless of circumstance, has the right to put their hands on another person in this city." Not one reporter asked about Jalen. Not one asked about the 20 minutes of footage preceding the 3 combinations. Hale's media consultant, Patrick Reeves, had sent the press pool a carefully edited clip, 90 seconds long, beginning at the exact moment Dot removed her reading glasses. Everything before that had been cut and filed as unverified by the Hale legal team. The cable networks ran the clip on a loop. One anchor called Dot a trained combatant concealing herself in a public space. They showed Connor's hospital photo, swollen face, neck brace, and slowed the uppercut down to half speed and zoomed in on the moment of impact. They did not show Jalen. They did not mention the blood on an 11-year-old boy's temple. They did not play the footage of the shove. The comment sections turned. Not all of them, but enough. There's no excuse for that level of force against an unarmed person. And why was an uncertified individual running youth programs without supervision? The cease and desist letter which Hale's office quietly leaked to 2 outlets became part of the story. She had already been warned. A petition appeared. Remove dangerous individuals from Riverside Park. 900 signatures by Tuesday evening. Dot was released on bail Tuesday morning. Her public defender was a woman named Sandra Pierce, 34 years old, sharp and overworked, 41 active cases, and a desk that had not been fully cleared since March. She met Dot in a conference room with a cup of cold coffee and a folder 2 inches thick. "The DA is moving for felony aggravated assault," Sandra said. "The argument is that your professional training background constitutes a deadly weapon under state statute. That elevates a battery charge significantly." "What about what he did to the boy?" Dot said. Sandra looked at her folder. "The Hale family's statement says Connor was attempting to de-escalate a confrontation when you attacked without warning. Brad Connor says he never touched the child. There are 19,000 people who watched him do it live." "I know, but the Hale legal team has filed a motion to have the pre-incident footage classified as unverified user content. The judge assigned to this case is Gerald Thorne." Sandra paused. Judge Thorne attended Alderman Hale's campaign fundraiser dinner in September. 14 weeks ago. Dot sat with that for a moment. So we are not in a favorable position," Sandra said carefully. "I want to be honest with you." "I appreciate that," Dot said. A restraining order was filed Wednesday. Dot was prohibited from entering Riverside Park or coming within 500 feet of its boundaries. Judge Thorne signed it the same afternoon it was filed. That evening, someone threw a rock through the front window of the house on Clover Street. It landed on James's rug, the braided one he had bought at an estate sale in 2003, and left a hole in the glass the size of a fist. No note, no face, just the rock and the glass and the cold air coming in. Dot swept up the glass, found a piece of cardboard in the garage and taped it over the hole, sat on the couch in the dark for a while. Gloria called at 9. Her voice was thin and careful. "Miss Washington, Jalen won't eat. He won't talk. He just sits by the front window with his shoes on. I found him this morning with his hands wrapped. He'd done it himself badly. The tape was all wrong, but he'd done it. He was just sitting there with his fists up." Dot closed her eyes. "Tell him I'll be back." "When?" Gloria asked. Dot didn't answer. She didn't know. Meanwhile, in a study on the 3rd floor of a house 12 blocks east, Ray Fontaine had not slept since Saturday. His desk was buried under archive boxes, 41 years of press credentials and fight cards and notebooks and photographs. He had pulled the right box in 20 minutes. He had been working from it ever since. The folder was labeled in his own handwriting. The ink faded to brown at the edges. Washington, Dorothea Millhaven Boxing Club, 1988 to 2019. Inside press clippings, training profiles, corner photographs from 3 world championship bouts. A photograph of Dot at 38 standing in the ring after Marcus Bell's 1994 title fight. The belt between them, her fist raised, her face absolutely calm, like a woman who had known exactly how it would end. Ray had stared at that photograph for a long time. Then he had called the State Boxing Commission. His source there called him back Thursday morning. "There's nothing in the official record," the source said. "But I found something in the complaint archive. A sealed report. Anonymous complaint filed April 1989. Unauthorized sparring operation warehouse on Fulton Avenue. Possible unlicensed bouts, no medical oversight, cash payments to fighters. A pause. The promoter named in the complaint is a Stephen Hale. Ray sat down slowly. He read the name again. Then he looked at the press conference footage on his laptop screen. Alderman Stephen Hale, American flag pin, "We are a city of laws." The same man. Ray Fontaine closed the laptop, opened a new document, and began to type. Ray Fontaine drove to Clover Street on Thursday afternoon. He parked in front of the house with the cardboard taped over the broken window and sat in his car for a moment before getting out. He was 65 years old and had spent 41 years writing about people who fought for things. He had sat ringside at Madison Square Garden and the MGM Grand and a converted warehouse in Biloxi, Mississippi, and he had learned to recognize the specific stillness of someone who had been through something real. He had seen it in fighters. He had seen it in their families. He was seeing it now from the street in the posture of a woman who had taped cardboard over her own broken window and was still keeping the rose bushes trimmed. He knocked. Dot opened the door. She looked at him the way she looked at most things, steady measuring, without urgency. "Ray Fontaine," he said. "I covered the Bell fight in 1994, the Carter fight in 2003. I was ringside for Webb in 2011. Dot looked at him for a long moment. Then she stepped aside and let him in. They sat at the kitchen table, James's photo on the shelf above the stove, watching. Dot made coffee without asking whether he wanted any, and set a cup in front of him, and sat across the table with her own hands wrapped around hers. Ray talked first. He laid out what he had found, the sealed complaint, the warehouse on Fulton Avenue, the promoter's name. He set a copy of the complaint document on the table between them. He didn't editorialize. He just put the facts down, one at a time, the way a careful man does when he understands the weight of what he's carrying. Dot listened without interrupting. Her face didn't change. She looked at the document, read the name, set it down. "The warehouse," she said finally. "April 1989. Yes. James fought there twice." She looked at James's photo. "He didn't tell me about the second time until it was over. Until afterward." She paused. "He said the promoter ran the operation out of a back office. Cash payments, no contracts, no medical. The fighters weren't told who the other man was until they were already inside." "The second bout," Ray said carefully. "That was when his shoulder," Dot said. "His opponent landed an illegal elbow in the third round. There was no referee to call it. No doctor at ringside. By the time I got him to the hospital, the damage was done." She set her coffee cup down. "That was the end of his career. He was 24 years old." Ray was quiet. "He never knew the promoter's name," Dot said. "He said not knowing was the only way he could keep from spending his whole life angry about it. He chose not to know." She looked at the document again. "I respected that choice. I never looked." "His name was Stephen Hale," Ray said. The kitchen was very still. James's photo watched from the shelf. Dot sat with that for a long time. Her hands were flat on the table. Not trembling. Just flat and still and present. "And now his son," she said slowly. "His son is the one in the park." "Yes." She closed her eyes. When she opened them, something had settled in her face. Not anger. Something older and quieter than anger. The expression of a woman who has just watched a very long story reveal its shape. Ray spent the next 2 days building the article. He pulled county records, Secretary of State business filings, property deeds, and banking records obtained through public records requests. In 1989, Stephen Hale was 26 years old and operating an unlicensed boxing promotion out of a warehouse he leased under a shell company called Riverside Athletic Holdings, LLC. He organized unauthorized bouts with no commission oversight, no licensed officials, no medical personnel. Fighters were paid in cash between $300 and $800 per bout, with no contracts and no liability coverage. Between 1987 and 1989, 9 fighters were documented as having competed in Hale's warehouse operation. 3 suffered career-ending injuries. James Washington was one of them. The other 2 had never come forward publicly. All 3 had received no medical assistance from the promoter following their injuries. Following the complaint filed in April 1989, Hale dissolved the shell company, transferred the warehouse lease, and pivoted into real estate development. By 1995, he had transitioned into local politics. By 2002, he was on the city council. By 2013, he was chair of the Parks and Recreation Committee, the same committee that had sent Dot the cease and desist letter. The man who had destroyed James Washington's career at 24 had spent the following 3 decades accumulating the institutional power to destroy his widow's life as well. And when his son had cornered that widow in a park and humiliated her in front of 20,000 people and shoved her 11-year-old student onto concrete, the alderman had used every mechanism available to him to bury her again. The arrest, the press conference, the edited clip, the compliant judge, the restraining order, the cease and desist that had been filed before the confrontation anyone could see. Ray published the article on Friday morning. The headline ran across the full width of the Courier's front page iron dot. How an alderman destroyed a fighter's career and came for his widow twice. It included everything: the sealed complaint with Hale's name, the shell company filings, the warehouse lease, the banking records, medical documentation from James Washington's 1989 injury, side-by-side photographs. Dot at 38 in the corner of Marcus Bell's championship bout, fist raised utterly calm, and Dot at 72 sitting on a bench with "Go Home, Grandma" painted across the seat behind her. The uppercut from the viral clip frame by frame matched against footage from the 1994 championship, identical technique, same trainer 30 years apart. At the bottom of the article, Ray had included one paragraph that was not investigation. It was observation. The woman in the park was not hiding. She was not dangerous. She was doing what she had done for 40 years, teaching a child to stand up straight and keep his hands up, and believe that the stutter and the limp and the missing father did not determine who he was going to become. The man who tried to stop her had done it before. He just used a different warehouse this time. Stephen Hale read the article at 6:14 Friday morning in his kitchen. His wife said his face went white before he finished the first paragraph. He called his attorney. The attorney's phone went to voicemail. He called Patrick Reeves. Reeves had already resigned by email at 5:58 a.m., 16 minutes after the article went live. By 7 a.m., the article had 200,000 views. By noon, it had 11 million. By Friday evening, #IronDot was the top trending topic in the United States, and #JusticeForDot was right behind it. The article reached 48 million views. By Saturday evening, it moved faster than the original viral clip. It moved faster than anything the Courier had published in its 93-year history. Ray Fontaine's phone ran out of battery twice before noon on Friday, and he stopped answering it somewhere around 2 in the afternoon and sat in his study in the quiet and looked at James Washington's photograph, the one he had found in the 1989 archive, a young man with his fists raised and his whole career still ahead of him. The boxing community found Dot before the courts did. It started with Isaiah Webb. He had been in Los Angeles when the original clip went viral and had watched it on his phone in a hotel gym and had not slept properly since. When Ray's article published Friday morning, Isaiah watched it load on his screen and then sat completely still for several minutes. Then he opened his phone and recorded a video, unscripted, no preparation, standing in his hotel room in a plain white shirt. He posted it at 9:45 Friday morning. By Sunday, it had 11 million views. "Everything I know," Isaiah Webb said in the video she taught me. "Every combination, every adjustment, every decision I ever made in a ring under pressure, I made it with her voice in my head. She never asked for credit. She never asked for anything. She just showed up every single morning and did the work." Looked directly into the camera. What they did to her husband. What they did to her. And then what they tried to do again. I need everyone watching this to understand something. Washington is the reason I have the life I have. And she is sitting in a house on Clover Street right now with cardboard taped over her broken window because she taught an 11-year-old boy to keep his hands up. Marcus Bell posted a statement. Dion Carter posted a statement. 3 other fighters had worked with at various points in her career posted statements. A former WBA president called Ray Fontaine directly and asked for Dot's contact information. The WBA issued a formal statement Saturday afternoon recognizing Dorothea Washington's contributions to professional boxing and condemning the circumstances of James Washington's career-ending injury in 1989. The statement called the unlicensed operation a criminal enterprise that robbed the sport of a promising competitor and his family of a livelihood, and which has gone unacknowledged for 35 years. The DA's office issued a statement Saturday evening. In light of significant new evidence brought to our attention, the charges against Dorothea Washington are under immediate review. By Sunday morning, the charges had been formally dropped. Judge Patricia Owens, not Judge Thorne, who had recused himself Friday afternoon following the publication of his connection to Hale's fundraiser, reviewed the restraining order Sunday and declined to renew it. Her written ruling was 4 sentences. The final sentence read, "There is no legal basis for restricting a law-abiding citizen from a public park, and the circumstances under which this order was originally obtained are presently the subject of investigation by the State Attorney General's office." The State Attorney General had opened that investigation Saturday morning. By Monday, the subpoenas had gone out. Hale's financial records, the shell company filings, the Fulton Avenue warehouse lease, communications between Hale's office and the Parks Department regarding Dot's cease and desist letter, communications between Hale's office and the DA regarding the aggravated assault charge. On Wednesday, Alderman Stephen Hale was formally charged with racketeering, operating an unlicensed sporting event, and obstruction of justice. The obstruction charge covered 2 separate actions: the buried complaints about Connor's behavior at the park, and the coordination with the DA's office to file charges against Dot within 48 hours of the incident, before a proper investigation had been conducted. The City Council voted Thursday, 8-1 to remove him. The single dissenting vote came from a council member who had accepted $17,000 in campaign contributions from Hale over 6 years. That council member's financial records were requested by the AG's office the following morning. Hale was escorted from City Hall by 2 officers. No press conference, no American flag pin. His attorney released a statement. Alderman Hale denies all charges and will vigorously defend himself in court. Nobody read past the first sentence. Connor Hale pleaded no contest the following week. Assault on a minor for the shove that put Jalen on the ground. Harassment. Criminal mischief for the spray paint and property damage. He was sentenced to 240 hours of community service and a 3-year restraining order from Riverside Park. His TikTok account was suspended permanently. His 280,000 followers moved on within a week, the way audiences move on from content that stops being entertaining. The comment section on his last video before it was taken down contained one repeating phrase, #IronDot. Sandra Pierce called Dot on Sunday morning. Her voice was different, lighter, like something had been set down. "Mr. Washington, Miss Washington, have you seen the news?" "My television has been off since Tuesday," Dot said. "The charges are dropped. The AG is investigating Hale. All of it. The warehouse, the complaints, the obstruction. Everything." A pause. "You can go back to the park." Dot was quiet for a long time. "Miss Washington." "I'm here," Dot said. "I'm here." She hung up the phone, sat on the couch for a moment. Then she stood, walked to the shelf, and picked up James's photograph, held it in both hands, looked at his face, 24 years old, fists raised, career ahead of him, all of it still possible in that moment before the warehouse on Fulton Avenue. "It's done," she said. "It's done now, James." She set the photograph back, walked to the front door, picked up the canvas tote, opened the door. Jalen was sitting on the front step. He had walked 9 blocks alone before sunrise. His shoes were tied in double knots. His hands were wrapped badly lopsided, the tape bunching at the wrist, the way it does when an 11-year-old does it himself in the dark without a mirror. But they were wrapped, and his fists were up. Guard position, protecting what matters. He looked up at her. "Miss Dot," he said. The stutter was there, but the words came through it. "I don't want to stop." Dot looked at him for a long moment. Then she sat down on the step beside him, took his hands in hers, unwrapped them carefully, and began again. 2 loops at the wrist, 3 across the knuckle. Pull tight between each finger. "We're not stopping," she said. They trained on the porch that morning. No park, no equipment, no oak tree. Just an old woman and a boy and a pair of mitts that had survived 48 years and intended to survive more. The neighborhood woke up around them, and nobody bothered them, and the morning light came over the rooftops and landed on the porch steps, and Jalen's footwork was the best it had ever been. And somewhere across the city, a parks director was picking up the phone to make a call she had been waiting to make for a week. The city parks director called on a Monday afternoon. Her name was Carol Edmonds, and she had been in the job for 3 years and had signed the cease and desist letter because Patrick Reeves had told her it was a liability matter, and she had been given no reason to question that, until Ray Fontaine's article gave her approximately 48 million reasons. She had written a formal apology to Dot before she called. She read it aloud over the phone, all 4 paragraphs without skipping anything. Dot listened to the whole thing. Then she said, "Thank you, Carol." "We want to do something," Carol said. "For the park, for the program. Whatever you need, equipment, a covered space, staffing funding. We want to do it right. And we'd like you to name it." Dot didn't hesitate. "The James Washington Youth Boxing Program," she said. "After my husband. He's the reason any of this exists." Carol was quiet for a moment. "That's a beautiful name," she said. The program launched officially in December. The city provided everything Carol had promised. Heavy bags, speed bags, jump ropes, a covered pavilion built beside the oak tree with a concrete floor and proper lighting, and a storage cabinet for equipment. 2 licensed coaches volunteered, both former Golden Gloves competitors who had followed the story from the beginning and shown up at Dot's door one Tuesday morning with their credentials and no agenda other than to help. Dot wasn't technically on the coaching staff. She didn't have current certification, and the shoulder precluded the full physical demands of licensed coaching. But every morning she was there, and every morning the licensed coaches stepped back when she began to speak, and nobody questioned it, and nobody needed to. Dot walked back into Riverside Park on a Tuesday morning in November, 7 a.m., canvas tote over her shoulder. New reading glasses, the old pair had been scratched in the fall, and Isaiah Webb had mailed her 3 replacement pairs with a handwritten note that said simply for the corner, "Love, Isaiah." She had kept all 3. The bench under the oak tree had been sanded clean. The red paint was gone. The wood had been refinished and sealed, and a small brass plaque had been screwed into the backrest. She stopped in front of it and read it. "This bench belongs to Dot Washington and everyone she teaches." She didn't know who had put it there. She asked around later and nobody claimed it. She never found out. Jalen was already there. He had arrived before her again, which had become his habit. He was sitting on the bench guard position, back straight, hands up, fists relaxed the way she had taught him, not braced, not clenched, just ready. His limp was barely visible now. 3 months of proper footwork had strengthened the leg in ways the specialist visits had not managed. He looked up at her and smiled. The stutter was still there somewhere behind the smile, but the smile was bigger. "You ready?" Dot asked. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "Show me your jab." He stood, planted his feet, and threw it. The snap was there, clean straight, pulled back fast. Elbow in guard, restored before she could blink. Again. Cleaner. Again. Cleaner still. Dot almost smiled. 3 months of mornings, and the boy was starting to look like a fighter. Not because he was big, not because he was fast, because he was precise and he listened, and he showed up every single day and put his hands out and let her wrap them and trusted that whatever she was building in him was worth the work. The other kids arrived one by one. Deshaun first, then a girl named Kezia, who had found the park after watching Isaiah Webb's video and had asked her mother to bring her every morning until her mother agreed. New faces appeared each week, children from the east side of the city, from across town, from neighborhoods Dot had never visited. One boy had taken 2 buses and walked 6 blocks because he had watched the clip and wanted to learn to move like that. Dot taught them all the same way. One thing at a time. Plant your feet. Hands up. Move like water. Miriam Cross came to the house on Clover Street the week after the program launched. She stood on the porch with a covered dish and tears already running before Dot opened the door. "I should have called," Miriam said. "Every single morning I watched, and I should have called, and I didn't, and I am so sorry, Dot. I am so sorry." Dot took the dish, looked at her neighbor for a moment. "You're here now," she said. "That counts." Miriam came to the park the following Tuesday and brought folding chairs and set them up along the edge of the training area and sat there every morning after that, watching, as though keeping watch was the least she could do, and she had decided to do it fully. Other parents started staying too. Someone brought a folding table with water bottles and orange slices. Someone else brought a hand-painted sign to replace the one that had been painted over. It read, "Riverside Youth Training All Welcome." Same words, same green letters, back on the oak tree where they belonged. Ray Fontaine visited one last time in December, the week the program officially opened. He brought a photographer named Diana Chen, who had covered 3 Olympic Games and had asked specifically to be the one to shoot this story. The photograph Diana took that morning became the most shared image in the Courier's history. Dot kneeling on cracked concrete at the base of the oak tree, wrapping Jalen's hands. Her reading glasses on one eye, looking down at the tape with complete focus. James's photograph, a small print laminated pinned to the inside of the canvas tote facing outward. Behind them, 19 children in a line, fists up, guard position, every one of them learning to protect what matters. The headline Ray wrote for the final article was simple. Iron Dot found her way home. Jalen's first amateur bout was in February, a youth exhibition at the Oakfield Community Center, 9 weeks after the program launched. He was 11 years old and 51 pounds lighter than his opponent, and his hands were shaking in the locker room when Dot wrapped them for the last time before he walked out. "You scared?" she asked. He nodded. "Good," she said. Scared means you care. Now plant your feet. He walked into the ring. Left foot forward, right foot back, hands up, weight balanced and low. He moved like water. He won in the third round on a unanimous decision, a clean right cross to the body that buckled his opponent's knees and brought the crowd to its feet. Dorothea Washington screamed from the third row loud enough that the referee turned around. Dot stood in the corner and watched and said nothing. When Jalen looked across the ring at her after the decision was announced, she nodded once. That was enough. That was everything. On the walk home, Dot passed the house on Clover Street and stopped at the fence. James's roses were blooming early this year, small and white and precise the way they always came in when the season turned. She touched one petal with 2 fingers. "We're okay," she said. "We're okay now, James." Then she picked up the tote, adjusted the strap on her good shoulder, and kept walking. Life lesson. Some people spend their whole lives hiding what they're worth because the world keeps telling them to make themselves smaller. Dot Washington spent 30 years stepping back from the thing she loved most, and when the moment came, it wasn't rage that brought her forward. It was a child with his hands still raised on the ground. Dignity doesn't disappear when someone tries to take it. It waits. And when it comes back with everything it ever was. If this story moved you, drop a comment and tell me who in your life showed up for you when nobody else did. Who wrapped your hands and told you to keep going. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you've been watching without subscribing, this is the story you'll wish you hadn't missed. Hit subscribe. We've got more.